Hey SaaS Insiders, I welcome you to this episode of our show. Today I am interviewing John Demian, and there are a lot of reasons why his journey with Eyelet, which is his company, is amazing. He quickly secured his pre-seed funding by a really creative way, and now working towards his seed funding and building his product. Just check out a small episode from it.
They'll ask very in-depth questions. And this goes for your investors as well. I've had a lot of meetings right now with investors, and I could tell if that meeting's going to go anywhere by the type of questions that they ask. If they go with generic question like how many team members are you? What's the market? What's the whatever technical stack you're using? That's good, but that discussion is not going to go anywhere. If they start asking you more detailed questions, that's a really good flag that, they're actually.
Yeah, and trust me, there are a lot of things like this in this episode, so make sure to listen till the end to get the maximum value. This episode is sponsored by the SaaS Insiders Studio. We help SaaS founders build their minimum viable products, MVPs, launch quickly, find a product market fit, and grow from there. SaaS Insider Studio works with non-technical founders that are on the pre-seed or seed stage to help them execute on their product vision. To learn more, go to my LinkedIn profile that you can find in the description to this episode and shoot me a direct message there. All right, let's jump straight into today's episode. SaaS Insiders, welcome to this episode of our show. Today with me, I have John Demian. He is the CEO and the founder of Eyelet. And today we have a really interesting journey that he'll be sharing with us, with his company, and what we can learn from it to apply it in our businesses. With that said, John, thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, it's great to be here. I appreciate the invite.
In a few sentences, it's like 1 minute version. Could you tell SaaS Insiders a bit more about your background, how you came to SaaS and what you're currently working on?
All right. Well, I started my career basically in 2005 as a developer. I was building Flash components in ActionScript 1.0. Funny enough, I was working for this company that they eventually launched their own SaaS in 2009. And I built the first iteration of that SaaS. It was in Flash. That's not really important. But what's important is that they've actually just signed as a customer with Eyelet right now. So it's just, brings a tear to my eyes. I'm really proud of that. But switching back to my career, started as a developer, worked as a developer for 7 years or so. And then I kind of got interested in the marketing aspect of whatever our colleagues were doing in the marketing department. Kind of switch over gears, started from scratch with them. And I worked as a marketeer ever since.
Okay, 7 years. Wow. I know a lot of founders in the SaaS, they come from the technical background, but it's like the marketing, it's the sales, it's the positioning that actually makes the business happen. So how that transition worked for you? Was it super easy switch, or there was some kind of struggle there?
Well, there was a lot of struggle because I had no formal education in marketing. It's kind of like it is today, where you have this entire taxonomy of things you need to learn, from, CLTV to all the acronyms that the marketing team has to work with. I had no idea of what they were, but I did have a very logical and technical expertise. So I was very analytical in my approach. And what I started with is with SEO. So my first year as a marketeer wannabe, I built 2,300 blogs on WordPress that took content automatically, translated it in 20-something languages, and posted on these different blogs just to do SEO. And I had interlinking and stuff. And I could rank any keyword on the planet in any language, basically in a matter of hours. So I probably, let's say 2 days on the first or second position. This was 2013, I think. Obviously, that doesn't fly with Google. So all of those domains got banned like a month later, but still as an experience, like an experiment, it was really fun. But naturally, then I kind of made my way towards the content marketing side of things. I started working with a lot of developer tooling companies. Because of my background as a developer, it gave me a unique point of view. I kind of understood how to address these technical audiences that were tougher to sell to. Developers are pretty smart, so you can't really market to them in the same way as you would probably other types of audiences. I'd like to think that I made a difference and I kind of helped those companies out a little bit.
Okay, so John, fast forward to Eyelet. What's your mission, and where do we go with this startup?
Eyelet is trying to be a customer success platform that focuses on the end user, meaning that Eyelet will provide and does provide the tools necessary for a product owner or a marketer to interact and create the experiences with their customers and their users without having to rely on a developer. It's a 100% no-code solution. We want it to be a no-code solution first, and then add all the bells and whistles like an API if you want to use it. We do have it, but that comes second. We don't even focus on it.
And I know we talked a little bit off the air about this, but I think it would be curious for others to know. You mentioned that to kick off Eyelet, you actually acquired some kind of product, some kind of software, and took it from there. Could you share that story, please?
Yeah, of course. So we were doing, as an agency, me and my colleague Andre, we've been doing these working with SaaS companies and implementing onboarding walkthroughs and guides and so on and so forth. But we were doing manually, and we kept running into the same issue. Every time we wanted to change something, we had to go through a deployment process, which is not something you want to do, especially when you have a large scale enterprise solution. You can't just push deployments to production every time you want to change something. So we knew we wanted to develop something, and we started developing something around 2020, but it was really slow, and we wanted to accelerate the process. So we ended up buying a company in Belarus. They had a product that did tours, but it was more of a tool than a service. So what we did was we took that, we integrated with our vision, made a bunch of tweaks to it, and then turn it into what Eyelet is today. We wanted the goal was buy the company, polish it a little bit, and take it to the investors, and use that as an MVP to get money. So I won't go into too much details on pricing, but let me put it like this: we raised about 8 times more what we spent on it in a matter of like probably 3 months. So we spent $1 and then we raised $8 on top of it.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask the specifics, but I was curious. It probably let you speed up the process to raise the pre-seed pretty much like you just did. And if you were to do it probably manually, meaning go and implement it from scratch, that would probably take much more time.
At least a year.
Well.
At least a year. And it will cost a lot because development is not a straightforward line. You kind of know where you're headed, but there's always going to be these twists and turns, like extra features, bugs, whatever. The platform just got an update. You need to do a bunch of reworks around it. So yeah, that helped us a lot.
That's an interesting strategy, John. We rarely hear those things because by the conventions, usually SaaS founder needs to go invest shit ton of money, shit ton of effort, hire a team, I'll go no code, build it, struggle with it. And you went let's just acquire what works. Let's just present it, right? So you basically applied your marketing twist to it in a way. It just made it more investable and just do the presentation basically, right?
That's exactly what we wanted to do too. We knew that that's the play to go about it. Although this is not the way to go 100% of the time, because when you buy a tool like this and you want to build something on top of it, there's something called technical debt. It's a debt that you're going to end up paying in the long run. So you're going to build a lot of services on a platform that's shaky and you haven't built it, and it probably wasn't built right to begin with. Luckily, in our case, it was really solid. Although we had to rewrite a bunch of code, the platform itself, the developers that build it, shout out to Vova, original developer, amazing guy. He built a solid platform. Like, it was built like a tank.
I'm just curious, like when you buy a product, does it always also come with the developers when you do it normally, like from experience, or just the product itself?
It depends how much money you have to spend. In our case, we kind of didn't have the money to hire the original developers. It would have helped a lot. That would have sped up our process immensely. But I had a little bit of technical experience. We had another co-founder that was a developer, so we were comfortable just taking it and doing it ourselves. Also, the original developers, we had an agreement with them that they would provide support for the next 6 months within a certain amount of hours per month. They would just help us do things, and they were very happy to do it. Every time we needed help, they jumped on it. Partially because they really liked the product themselves and they didn't want to see it, just go to waste. They wanted to, make some money on it, but as well as, see it thrive eventually.
No, of course, because after that, it's even from the business perspective, you can say, oh, we actually created a platform for this startup, right? So if you succeed, it adds them social capital as well. One of the interesting topics is raising a pre-seed, because that's what you basically did, right? Before product market fit, before full validation, like a lot of traction, you raised funds to develop this, to find the product market fit. A lot of founders, they struggle with this because I have no traction. So I gotta boil in this pre-seed thing for a year, get a few customers, and only then I can talk to people. Could you share with me a little bit what's the mindset of like raising the pre-seed? How do you approach that? Like, how is that different from going into the seed round?
Well, with the pre-seed round, you're always going to look at a tiny amount of money. It's not going to be like millions of dollars. Usually, I know there's cases, but it's usually just a little bit of money just to get you going. And you have to be really wise in the way you spend the money, because you have to make it last as much as possible. So when trying to go, you can't really go to VCs, for example, for a pre-seed. Nobody's going to talk to you. There's a lot of VCs, and in my experience, at least, there's a lot of VCs out there that say they invest in early stage startups. A pre-seed is not an early stage startup usually. So you should really try to leverage your 3 Fs, as I like to call them, your friends, family, and other fools, to raise that initial bit of money. And, jokes aside, we were extremely lucky to find the people that invested in our company in the first pre-seed round. And we were even more fortunate that the same investors wanted to double down, and they're coming in the seed round with a little bit of money too. So they really understand the product, the market, the problem, our solution, and they're really invested. So find someone that's passionate about the problem you're solving. Usually you're going to end up being able to raise a little bit of money just to get you going. I've also seen a lot of companies have a lot of success pre-selling their product even before it's done. So, just promise that you're going to build a product in the next 6 months. And if you buy it right now, instead of paying like $10 a month for it, you're going to just pay $2 a month for, 24 months or for life. It doesn't even matter. There's a lot of ways to get that initial traction.
Well, one of them you mentioned is pre-sale, right? Because I don't really count luck as a strategy.
No, it's not.
I always teach SaaS Insiders, luck and hope is not a strategy. So I know the more you do, the luckier you get, the more you implement, right? So from your perspective, pre-sale
funny how that works.
Yes, pre-sale is one of them. But are there any other strategies you would recommend founders to pursue to find their perfect angel in the beginning?
Yeah. So just do things that don't scale at first and then automate them. Meaning you're trying to build a SaaS that does X and Y for your customers. Instead of relying on the SaaS for the first part of the time, just do it as an agency. People think that's very unrealistic, but if you look, closer to it, in most cases, or let's say in some of the cases, that's actually doable. It was in our case. We did these guides and onboarding optimization as a service. And we then leveraged that connections that we had with those customers and then sold them an automatic like no-code solution on top of it. So it was very easy to make that initial sale. So if you can do it, this way, that's an awesome way to do it. But if you don't, and you really, really need to get that initial capital, find SaaS companies that are successful within your community. It could be in your hometown, it could be in your country, and go talk to them. Like, let's say out of 100, 10 of them might be willing to invest and are in a position to invest. Usually once you go through the struggle of building a startup and you understand how difficult raising money is, you'll be more prone to actually helping like a fellow entrepreneur that's struggling but has a really good product or a really good vision or a really good idea. And yeah, that's definitely going to help. And I've seen that happen actually not that long ago with a buddy of mine. He managed to actually raise money that way, and it was very impressive.
Interesting. One figure you've mentioned is talk to 100 companies. A lot of times I see people get discouraged by the first 5 conversations because they don't set the goal properly, the percentage properly. So the first five people tell them that their product sucks. And like, well, maybe it does suck. So like, what's your take on this? Like how persistent, like for how long we should be trying on average to get this number from your experience, from friends' experience?
Actually, you should not get discouraged by those 5 people. I think you should make those people your friends and try to come back at them time and again and ask them for feedback. Because what usually happens is when you launch, we have an idea, you have this awesome SaaS idea, you go to your friends and they're your friends and they support you, they love you. They're going to say, dude, that's amazing. Jump headfirst into it. And just do it. You're going to be, balling in a couple of years. That's not how it goes. Those are not the people that are going to buy the product from you. Those don't even count. It's fine to have a support system. It's really helpful to have a healthy support system, but don't rely on them. Rely on the people that actually point out the flaws in your plan. Try to work out solutions with them. Most people won't mind giving you like their honest feedback. And think of it, whenever you're pitching the idea to one of these like potential customers, think of them as an investor. And there's a few signs to know if their feedback is good and if they're really interested. One of them is they're going to say flat out, yeah, I would pay this much amount of money, because they know a figure. That's a really good validation method. They know a figure. I'm going to pay $30 a month, $300 a month, $30,000 a month. They will know a figure how much that problem is costing them. And the second one, they'll ask very in-depth questions. And this goes for your investors as well. I've had a lot of meetings right now with investors, and I could tell if that meeting's going to go anywhere by the type of questions that they ask. If they go with generic question like how many team members are you? What's the market? What's the whatever technical stack you're using? That's good, but that discussion is not going to go anywhere. If they start asking you more detailed questions, that's a really good flag that they're actually interested. Yeah, you should probably provide them as much detail as possible and try to get going.
That's deep. One of the strategies I heard from another SaaS Insider, another guest, is you approach potential clients or investors almost like friends to give feedback. You're basically asking like, hey, I'm building this startup. Would you like to, can I ask for 15 minutes of your time because you might benefit, because I'm building potentially for you. Once he was asking those questions, like if they're actually interested, like, that's interesting. Like, can I buy it right now? Or something like, oh, how can I invest? And I'm like, well, I'm still raising money for this. So it's a much easier conversation. Or if they say like, this sucks and this sucks, first of all, they don't feel weird, because when you're asking for money, it's a bit hard for personal nature to reject someone. Like it's in the DNA, like it's hard because from the tribal periods, like rejection means death, right? So it's really hard for them. But if you're just asking for feedback, they're much open, like, oh yeah, you're just asking, I'll give you all of those things, right? And it gave him the opportunity to come back to them when it's solved and say like, okay, what do you think about it now? And they're like, oh, that's good. How can I buy it? So it's one thing I found as well.
It's actually a really good option. I didn't know this was a strategy. I've heard of it later on, but we kind of did the same thing with our first potential customers. That's how we went about it. We told them, this is not a sales call. I just want to show what we have, this tiny nugget of an MVP. Would you care to just drop a few lines of feedback? In return, I'm gonna give you the product for free for a whole year. We landed so many people this way. I can't even begin to stress that. And the good thing is that even if you have a crappy product at first, because you're giving them the product for free and building it in a way that it will help them first, they'll still use it and they'll provide feedback and they'll be happy about it. So it's a really good strategy. Yeah.
John, how do you see the things being different from the pre-seed to seed stage? Now, if I understand this correctly, you're at the moment while you're seeking investment for the next round, for the next sprint. What do you think is different in this approach? Of course, in addition to different numbers, in your presentation and the things you articulate to investors, what are the things that are different?
The presentation to the investor has to be different. It should be focused at this point. You should have, once you go past the pre-seed, you need to have a focus. You need to know where your product is heading. If there's pivoting to be done, do it as soon as possible. I like I had a CEO, Annika, and she used to say this all the time: fail fast, fail often, but do it as fast as possible. And if it doesn't work, try it. If it doesn't work, move on quickly. And that's how we ended up in the position where we are right now, where we're very focused on a particular problem, and we don't even care about the market and what we name our, because the messaging itself, it's not really as important for us because we know what the problem we're solving, and that's what we're targeting. We know who's using the product and for what reason, and we're just giving them the tool they need to make a better product. So focus is really, really important. You need to know what you're building and for whom. And also you need to provide some traction. There's got to be some traction behind it. It doesn't even matter. Money doesn't count. I was so surprised because we were pushing to get more sales and they were like, oh, so you made it doesn't matter. You made 10K, 40K a month MR. Most of them don't count. How many users, how many people actually come back and use your product on a daily basis, on a monthly basis? What's the churn? What are your reviews look like? And traction is everything at this stage, I think.
And that's really important here because a lot of times we as entrepreneurs, we look at the revenue or profit as the primary indicator of this is success or this is not a success, right? I think at the seed stage, just like you pointed out, it's more about growth oriented, how fast we can scale that. Don't worry about profit this year or maybe this half a year, right? How big can we go? Because I think they're investing more in equity because they want to exit as soon as possible, right? So if it's series A, B, C, yeah, profitability matters. So if you're not profitable and you're expecting to be profitable, I mean, there might be a problem. But
yeah, it really depends on the product too. With SaaS products, that the main benefit, the main attraction of a SaaS product is the fact that it could scale, like you've mentioned. There's a clear hockey stick approach to growth there. It has to scale. With the only thing you have to do, I think, my personal opinion, in the seed stage, in the pre-seed stage, is find one avenue of growth where you could say, hey, if I pay $100 in ads, I get $1,000 in revenue, or whatever, something like that, something that could scale. You put $1 in, you take $2 out. It could be anything. It could be content marketing. It could be, different channels. Maybe you find that the best way to sell your product is to Slack channels. It could happen. You just need to find one of them and then use the seed money to do two things: build a better product and to find more of this or scale this if it's just one.
You're probably right now talking about unit economics, right? Customer acquisition cost and how it translates into scale. Can you explain why this is so crucial at this stage specifically? And what kind of metrics you think are the most important to present? For example, from your perspective, what you are trying to achieve?
They're crucial because if you don't know how much it costs to get a customer, maybe acquisition cost is not even as important as figuring out a scalable way of getting them. If you don't know the numbers, if you don't know how much it costs to get them, how much revenue you can get out of a customer, like the lifetime value of that customer, how much money do you know you need in that raise round? Need 100,000, a million? $5 million, unless you have that micro unit figured out, you can't even look at the macro picture of it. It's really important to figure out how much a customer costs to get, or a user costs to get to the platform, or to figure out what the lifetime of that customer would be. In our case, for example, we haven't spent a dime on ads. Ads could be a really good avenue for us for growth. We don't know because we haven't tried it. One of the things that we want to do once we get our money is to actually do ads. We want to have a sales team. Nobody in our team knows sales. What we know works right now is content marketing. And we know content marketing works because we've done content marketing for years. And for SaaS businesses, I think it's almost 100% the time work really well. Yeah. So we kind of have that first pillar of growth, the content marketing one, and it's really good. We're raising money to figure out what else might work.
John, what do you think changes in entrepreneurs' focus and priorities when they switch from pre-seed to seed? We have a lot of founders that have just raised seed and are going from there. We have the ones who are just approaching seed round right now. Mm-hmm. What do you think are the fundamental changes in you as an entrepreneur? Like, what kind of things you prioritize on? Okay, it's the pre-seed round. This is what I'm prioritizing. Now we're approaching seed. What do you think will be done differently from your side?
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but when you get more money in your seed round, you're going to have to focus more on spending less of it. When we first started out, we had just a tiny little bit, like 155,000 in the bank, but we used to spend it on like agencies to do X and Y and figure out, what works and what doesn't. And that was a really dumb way to spend that little money that we had. What you have to do once you kind of get that seed round is make sure you, especially in the current, economic climate, you need to make sure that runway extends as much as possible. And then only have a binary focus on whatever you're doing with the money. You have 0 and 1. If the thing that you're about to spend money, time, energy on can equate to a positive result, meaning, money back, a return on investment, it's a 1. If it's not, or if it's in a, long term, like 6 to 12 months from now, don't do it. Focus on immediate results and go that route, especially when you're looking at a seed round. It's going to run out really fast because most of the time you're building a team, which costs money. You're going to build an infrastructure because you're scaling your startup, and it's going to cost a lot of money. And then marketing costs, or that's just, run through the roof.
What you're saying makes sense, because I was just listening to this show from Y Combinator, if you're familiar with
big fan.
Yeah. What they were sharing is one of the biggest mistakes that founders do with their money at the seed round as well is they invest like in experts and advisors. Let me grab that guy from Apple that has been working there for 10 years. Like, he's getting paid like $400K per year, but we'll try to match his salary. We'll try to do it, right? So, or let us buy this PR agency services. Let us be in the publications. So it's kind of things that are not directly moving the needle in terms of getting growth. But when people get the seed money, they tend to, let me try it. Let me see how it works. So we need to be more visible.
Yeah, and I would love for that to work, but usually whenever you bring one of these experts in, this is only because they're an expert, and that's usually a good thing. They will take a lot of time to understand every single beat, every single moving part of your system, which will cost a lot of money to do it. So you're paying a premium salary for somebody to learn everything from the get-go, whereas if given the option, maybe somebody that you already work with can probably do that for less money, maybe, let's say just as efficient, if not better. So I'm a big believer in dancing with who brought you to the ball, So I've worked in companies where once we raised capital, we like hired leads, like tech leads from the outside, and it stings for your current people, that's not fun. Yeah, like all of a sudden you're not as valuable as this new guy that just walked in the door. And like for the past 12 months, you've always been paid late, a couple of weeks because, startup life. Yeah, that's
I
one
think
of the things I swore I would never do is,
it's almost like, please meet Rob. He'll be your new supervisor and he'll be paid 6 figures now, right?
yeah, exactly.
And you're like, okay, like what's going on, right? So it's
Bruh,
I
I've been
heard,
sleeping at the office for the past 2 months. Like, what's going on?
yeah, I heard a lot of times the way it works for established companies is, or startups as well, but the ones who got experience is when you bring someone at the higher management level and put them straight into the team, it creates huge resistance, obviously, especially for the ones who were sleeping in the office in the past couple of years, right?
Yeah.
So what I heard working is inviting them as external advisor, positioning it as, it's like, hey, this is Rob. He'll be just consulting us on some things in a way to kind of get them to know the team better, just so they can use to him, that he's not a threat. He's actually trying to help. He's external. Yep. He doesn't take your role, And when things start getting better, when they actually start creating some meaningful connection, then you raise the point that maybe we can bring him to the team. And now it's much less resistance because people already know him. So he's not.
No, that's really smart. That's really smart. Yeah.
One thing. It's like when it comes to CMO, new CEO positions, those kind of stuff, like who'll be basically, supervising other people. So that's what I heard from VCs as well, what they recommend, because you need to put some smart people in those roles, especially when you're growing. But just putting someone random from outside, at least that's how it looks to the team, right? Sometimes it sounds a bit threatening.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. And I think this is especially true for developer position, because developers code their project as their own babies. They pour their souls into it, and everybody has a secret recipe. Like they write their functions in a very specific way. So when somebody else comes and smacks them over the head and says, "No, that's wrong. That's not how you do it," it's hard not to take offense. So these kind of relationship needs to be built over time, and this is actually like consulting in the project for the first couple of months is actually a very smart way to go about doing that.
Yeah, because if you look at this, it's almost like a family, and someone brings like, hey, this is going to be your new father right now, right?
Yeah.
What's going on? So it's but I get it as well. If you were to give like one most important advice from your journey from Eyelet, from the pre-seed, acquiring the product, building it, now going into seed stage, if you were to give an advice almost like to a younger self, if you were to go back in time when you were just starting with this, what would be like 1 or 2 things that you learned and would be like the most important to convey to those people? If it's just like 1 or 2 things they would take away from this conversation, the most important ones.
Okay. Well, there's a couple of things. One is sell or market the product from day one. Don't wait until you have this, whatever version of polished product you have in your head. That's never going to happen. You're never going to have the product that you're happy with. If you think you have it, then maybe you're in the wrong profession, because you're never going to be happy with your product. And that's a good thing. But don't wait until like 5 months, 6 months, a year down the line. Sell it from day one. Meet with people, talk to them, tell them. I like to finish all my sales call with the like magic wand thing. I asked them, if you had this magic wand right now and you could smack, Eyelet with it and create a feature for it, what would it be? Like, what would you like for it to happen? And some of them, actually, one of the best ideas for Eyelet came from one of those discussions. And then you validate it with other product owners and SaaS businesses. And you talk to them, what do you think about this? Would this work? And never focus on the feature they request. That's a very dumb move. You always focus on the task that it resolves. So apply jobs to be done when talking about feature and feature roadmaps. Don't look at features, look at what they accomplish. That's the way to go about it, because everyone's going to be like to do, the same thing in a different way, So, and the second part would be, I don't even know if I should say this, but I screwed up a lot. And if you're starting out, just expect that and embrace it. Because I've spent a lot of time kicking myself in the butt for things that I've said, done, didn't do, didn't say, just to accomplish something. So just accept failure as it comes and just embrace it from day one. It sounds so cliche, but it will help you so much. Just realize that, everybody's human. People that you work with, yourself, are human. Accept it. You'll get further in life, but in your startup as well. If you just, accept that you're going to fail sometimes, and it's okay. Just always have that, plan B in case something doesn't happen. What do you do?
This is really cool, John, because I think absolutely any person on earth has this. Like, I don't care if you're Elon Musk, if you're just getting started. When you're a philosopher and you're telling this someone, it's like, oh, you will fail. That's normal. Embrace it. It sounds like you're smart. But when this happens to you, you're like blinded. Like, oh my God, why this happens to me? Why do I deserve this? It's not going to work, right? So it's when we're in the situation, like it really takes probably character and willpower to actually remember that this is what you were been talking about. This is it's happening. You're expecting that.
Yeah, this is it. You need to get your plan B, circle around, pivot, do whatever it needs, but you have to do it. Like you mentioned, Elon Musk. Can you imagine what it must have felt like? Like you spent months and months and millions of dollars to have this rocket shoot out into space and explode like 5 seconds later.
4 times. Yeah, 4 times.
4 freaking times. And he was like, yeah, sure, let's figure out what went wrong and not do it the next time. And yeah, that's something that I always had to struggle with. I still do, honestly. One of the things that I've started doing lately is like engage more with the customers, my audience and whatever, like through LinkedIn or Twitter. And I'm still working on this. But what I still do to this day is I write this message and then spend the next hour just hovering over it, deleting paragraphs, adding new one, explaining, worrying about if will this offend someone? Will this be too like a stupid post? Or, stop doing that. Stop questioning yourself first. Like do it, trust your instinct. It really works if you do that.
It's interesting. Probably the more those situations come, the more you get used to them, right? So maybe like in 20 years, you'll be like, yeah. But I remember vividly my first couple things like this. It's like the thought is, this is the end. Really, this is it. Like this is end. Like we're not going anywhere. There's no chance we're surviving, right? But then I still push, and in 2 weeks we get the growth, exponential growth, because we got to the hardest part, right? Like disruption follows intention. Like something happened, you learned from this, and this is why you're there. So it's really crucial.
It's a learning process. Like the entire part is just you're gonna be slapped around a bunch of times, but just get up, keep going.
I'm curious, what kind of resources you would recommend to SaaS founders to dig into it, to learn maybe about entrepreneurship, SaaS fundraising, maybe some kind of books, maybe some specific titles you would like to recommend, maybe some speakers, mentors, communities. What are the resources that you would equip the younger version of John to propel him even faster towards their goals?
There's a really interesting book, and I can't remember now. I was trying to look it up right now. Kill something. I read it like a couple of years ago, and it was really, really good. I'll remember it and I'll pass it along. But one of the most important things that you have to arm yourself when you go in this route is find a community. Find a community and leverage their support. It doesn't have to be money. Like I'm not just talking about money's good, but unless you have people that you can rely on to give you an honest feedback and like pull you back sometimes when you're trying to, jump the fence, or it's really, really, really important. It could be like one of those Slack communities. It could be SaaS Insider. It could be anything. Just find one. It's crucial, and you got to do it. You got to do it.
What would be the final thoughts to conclude our conversation? What kind of note you would like to wrap it up?
Well, I was telling you something before we started. If you do end up raising money, and it's something I heard the hard way. There's 2 rules. One is you don't fuck with VC money. Sorry, I said the F word. But the second one is don't let anybody F with your vision of the product. You got to trust yourself, accept constructive criticism. Well, actually accept all criticism that comes your way, but stay true to what you believe, because everybody's going to try to pull you in that direction. Remember that everyone that has a hammer in their hands sees only nails around them. So remember that when you're, trying to navigate feedback and criticism, and stay true to what you actually believe in.
John Demian, everyone, John, I thank you so much for joining us today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
SaaS Insiders will see you in the next episodes.